If you're just beginning to learn how to solder, or you're looking to fill gaps, fundamental gaps in the knowledge that you have, then this video is for you. You're going to learn all the things that you need to know to begin soldering. And a couple of these things might shock you if you've heard any of the advice of some people who don't really know exactly what they're talking about. So number one is your solder. There are different types of solder, the most common being lead solder and lead-free solder, and I only recommend leaded solder. And the reason being is it melts at a cooler temperature, and it's easier to tell when you have a good joint. It's a lot easier to work with because of the lower temperature. And there are two very common formulations, 60-40 tin lead and 63-37. And the main difference between those two is as 60-40 cools, it solidifies gradually. But as 63-37 cools, it solidifies all at once. So that can make things a little bit easier, but I usually use 60-40 and it works really well for me. You just have to have more steady hands as you let the part cool and don't blow on it. But as for the diameter of the solder, I recommend 0.8 millimeters or smaller, which is also 31 thousandths of an inch. And the reason for that is the smaller the wire, the easier it is to control how much solder you add to the joint at a time. The bigger the wire, the more difficult that becomes. And 0.8, for some stuff, it's almost too big, but it's not really. It's just easier to work with smaller stuff, especially if you're just starting out and you're getting a feel for how much solder to add to the joint. Now, second is your soldering iron. You can do what I did and start with this cheap iron. And there are a couple things that you can learn from this. And because this cheap iron is not temperature controlled, it has no setting on it, it's only one temperature. So you learn to work with your technique and not adjust the temperature. And the benefits are really, it's cheap. So when you're learning to take care of it, you're not, there's not a lot on the line. It's something cheap for you to learn with. And you get the benefit of the only thing separating you from a good solder joint is good technique. But I understand if you don't want to start with the cheap iron, because the learning curve can be a little steeper that way. So the iron that I use, it's not an expensive iron. It was about a $50 soldering station on Amazon. It's a generic brand, so it's not like a name brand Hakko or Weller, but it does a good job for me. It's a Chinese brand called Yiwa, or I don't really know how you say it. That's how I say it. And the biggest point of maintenance with your soldering iron is your tip care. You want to make sure you keep that tip clean, and I use brass wool. I only use brass wool. A lot of people like the wet sponge, but I don't like the thermal shock that it imposes on the tip. I just clean with brass wool and it does a great job. It keeps my soldering tip nice and shiny. And all you do is you just plunge it in there like that. Let me get it close up. So you take a look at this tip and see how shiny it is. This is not a new tip, but when you clean it, you just stab it in there several times, plunge it around. And I do that before every joint, after every joint, before I turn the iron off, right after I turn it on. Probably more than necessary, but that way you know it's not less than necessary. All right, next is what temperature you want to solder at. If you go with the temperature adjustable soldering iron, and eventually you'll move to one of those anyway, you don't want to stay on the cheap iron. That's just what I learned on, and there are some benefits to learning on it, like I mentioned before. But working with leaded solder, you'll want to solder at around 730 degrees Fahrenheit, which is approximately 322 Celsius. And I've found that to be the best sweet spot. It's hot enough that you can work quick, and it's cool enough that you're not going to burn anything up, and you have a little bit of wiggle room in your timing. And that's what works great for me. Sometimes you want to turn the temperature up if you're working with lead free, or if you only work with lead free, then I would go between 750 and 800. But my knowledge is a little bit more limited on lead-free because I only use and only recommend lead. Sometimes if you're working on something that has a lot of thermal mass, an example might be this chip with a heat sink on it. This has a lot of thermal mass, especially if you have a heat sink that has solder pins on it. That is, well, it's a heat sink. That is a lot of thermal mass. Then you might want to turn your iron up just so you can have a little extra heat to dump into that when you start. The power of your iron is going to be more important for that, and you're going to need to spend more time with the iron, but that little bit of extra temperature can help jumpstart that spot that you need to get hot to the temperature, so you don't have to work it as long as you would otherwise. Now, if you're doing rework, like you're reflowing solder joints or replacing a part, then you're probably working with lead-free solder. And at that point, what I recommend is to stay at 730 Fahrenheit, but add a little bit of leaded solder in at the same time to mix it with the lead-free and get the whole thing to flow. Or you can turn your iron up if you're having trouble melting those lead-free joints, or you're going to reflow and add some lead-free solder to it. All right, next is your technique, and it's really simple, but here are a couple tips to help you really get the hang of it as you start out. And the main thing is your contact area of the iron, and I'll demonstrate with this. If you're soldering to something, you don't want to just touch the tip to what you're soldering to. You want to maximize that contact area. And the cone tip isn't always the best choice, but we'll talk about those in a moment. So I mentioned it earlier, but it's not just about the contact area, but also about your timing. What you want to do is hold your iron on the spot that you're soldering, and you want to make good contact with the pad or the through hole. I recommend starting with through hole parts and not surface mount parts. Get those down before going to surface mount. But you want to have your tip making maximum contact with that through hole pad and with the pin as well. And you want to add a little bit of solder right to the iron where it meets the joint that you're making. And then you want to make sure you get those parts nice and hot. You want to get it to the point where the solder is flowing to those parts. So sometimes there's a bigger thermal mass and you have to dwell with the iron longer. Other times it's really quick, but no matter what, you want to make sure that you get that solder flowing. And once that solder is flowing, then you don't want too much. You don't want a big ball of solder, and you don't want too little. You don't want to still be seeing unsoldered parts, but you want that solder to flow nice and evenly and make a nice concave section on the part that you're soldering. And then once the solder is flowing, that's really when your timer starts, so to speak. You don't want to dwell with the iron too long, because then you could have some negative effects. And what can happen is the copper lifts off the circuit board, which is bad, or the solder is oxidizing much too quickly and you've spent through your flux, which is bad because there's flux in the solder wire. If this video is helpful to you so far, go ahead and hit that like button and consider subscribing if you'd like to see more videos like this in the future. And consider signing up for the mailing list at the top of the description if you would like to join a live workshop with me. This is something that I am just testing out, and it's a more premium offer in addition to the YouTube videos. So if that's something you'd be interested in, just join the mailing list. There's no obligations or anything, and you're not going to be spammed. So now we'll get back to the rest of the tips. And the next thing is iron tips. I mentioned it earlier, there are different kinds of iron tips, and a lot of people don't recommend the cone tips. They work fine for me, and they're not bad. They have their weaknesses, and their strengths are average, but they work. But these are two other types of tips that I've used. And on the right here, we have a smaller cone tip. And I don't use it very often, but it does come in handy for finer work. And then on the left here, this one can be a real workhorse. This is a chisel tip. It has a pretty good surface area. And these are good for desoldering with a solder wick. You can very easily lay that chisel right on the wick. And they're just good in general as an all-rounder. I really recommend this tip. I recommend getting cone tips and chisel tips. Try both. So next are a few soldering aids. And the first one might be kind of obvious to some of you, and that is helping hands, to help you hold wire and hold stuff in place as you solder things. And I have a different type here. It's actually holding one of my other soldering aids, this gooseneck type, and it has 4 of them on it. And I use this one most often. I don't use the other one very often, partially because it's broken. But it does still come in handy. But then we have also a bright light, and this, I'm just running it off of 12 volts. It's kind of jerry-rigged together, but this helps a lot. I'm not straining my eyes trying to see what I'm doing. You definitely want some kind of bright light. And the last soldering aid are tweezers, and I have several different types of tweezers. I could keep laying tweezers here for the next several minutes, but by far I use these ones the most. And these are just the same thing that I have modified. I've bent the tips and just a few other kinds. I have a good variety, and they all come in handy. Now, no video on beginner soldering tips will be complete without flux. And I use the liquid kind. This comes in various forms. You can get it as solid pine rosin, or you can get it as a gel form. Most flux is pine rosin. The flux that's in the solder wire is usually pine rosin, especially if it's lead solder. But usually you don't need more than what is in the solder wire. So most of the time you don't have to use any extra flux. I didn't have any standalone flux for a long time because I just didn't need it. But I got it because there are sometimes it does come in handy, especially with SMD work. If, say, you're reflowing joints and you for some reason don't want to add solder, use a little bit of flux. It'll help kind of reconstitute that joint a little bit. If you're having to spend a long time with the iron because you have a large part that is needing to suck up a lot of heat, some extra flux can help. You usually have to clean up more after you use extra flux. But there are people who will tell you to use flux liberally, and you really don't have to do that. In my experience, it makes things harder to do when you have too much flux covering up your work and you can't see what's going on. Everything's all sticky. And then I always end up cleaning it all up and just using the flux that's in the wire and doing a better job that way. And this last one is the one that will probably shock you the most, and that is fumes. If you're using lead solder, the fumes do not contain lead. Lead does not vaporize at soldering temperatures. If the lead was vaporizing, you'd have other problems and a red hot iron. So the lead's not vaporizing, the lead's not in the smoke. So what is in the smoke? Well, as far as lead solder goes, that's pine rosin. So it's basically campfire smoke. And no smoke inhalation is a good thing. But that being said, it's not any worse than a campfire. So it's not something that you need to be concerned about. But if you want to get a fume extractor, go ahead and do it, because I don't recommend whiffing the fumes, but they kind of do smell pretty good. Now, if you're using lead-free solder, some of that stuff does have some pretty nasty fumes. So you really don't want to be even smelling those fumes, which counterintuitively, the unleaded solder, the lead-free solder, is often more dangerous than lead solder. The only caveat with lead solder is you don't want to handle your food after you handle lead solder. You want to make sure you wash your hands, and that's about all the precaution that's required. But if you have sensitive lungs or you just don't want to breathe the fumes, I totally get it. Get the fume extractor, get the respirator if you're sensitive, but for most of us, it's not really a big concern. So if you have any questions or topics you'd like me to cover, leave a comment down below. Hit that like button, hit subscribe, hit the bell so you're notified of future releases. And if you're interested in a live workshop, join the mailing list below to be notified when those take place. I'll see you guys in the next one.